Hi everyone! Today we will crochet a warm, beautiful and cozy sweater. I used the crisscross shell stitch to create knitting texture. The pattern is very flexible, so you can use any semi-wool or acrylic yarn you have. You will find information about the yarn, sizes and written instruction below the video. The main pattern. The number of stitches is multiply of 6 plus 3. The first row. Crochet as many chains as you need according to your measurement. 2DC in the third chain from the hook. Single crochet, skip next 2 chains, single crochet in next chain. Skip next 2 chains, shell stitch in next chain. Skip next 2 chains, single crochet in next chain. Repeat the steps to the last 3 chains. Skip next 2 chains, 3DC in the last chain. The second row. Change the color of the yarn. Chain 1. Turn your work. Single crochet in the first DC. DC, chain 1, DC in the space after the next single crochet here. Chain 1, DC in the space before the same single crochet. Chain 1, single crochet in the middle of the next shell stitch. Chain 1, DC in the space after the next single crochet. Chain 1, DC in the space before the same single crochet. Repeat the steps to the end of the row. At the end of the row, chain 1 and single crochet in the last DC. Row 3. Chain 1, turn, single crochet in the first single crochet. Shell stitch in the first chain 1 space between 2 crisscrossed stitches. chain 1, shell stitch in the chain 1 space between two crisscrossed stitches. Repeat the steps to the end of the row. A single crochet in the last single crochet. Row 4. Change the color of the yarn, chain 3 and turn. DC in the first single crochet. Chain 1, single crochet in the middle of next shell stitch. Chain 1. Crisscross stitch in around next single crochet of the previous row. Chain 1, single crochet in the middle DC of next shell stitch, chain 1. Repeat the steps to the end of the row. At the end of the row, 2 DC in the last single crochet. The 5th row. Chain 3, turn, 2 DC in the first DC. Chain 1. Shell stitch in the chain 1 space between two crisscrossed stitches. Chain 1. Repeat the steps to the end of the row, 3 DC in the last DC. Row 6. Change the color of the yarn, chain 1, turn, single crochet in the first DC, chain 1, crisscross stitch in the next single crochet of the previous row, chain 1. Single crochet in the middle DC of next shell stitch, chain 1, crisscross stitch in the next single crochet of the previous row, chain 1. Repeat the steps to the end of the row. At the end of the row, single crochet in the last DC. Repeat rows 3, 4, 5 and 6 until you reach the desired length. Shoulders. Mark the places for the shoulders and repeat the main pattern. I crocheted 10 rows. Crochet the back part in the same way, sew them together, make shoulders and side seams, leaving the armholes for sleeves. Sleeves. Measure your armhole and crochet as many rapports as you need according to your measurement. I started with 69 chains. Repeat the main pattern to the 31st row. Cut the yarn and turn your work. Connect the gray yarn to the top of the first wide shell stitch. Chain 1, single crochet in the same stitch. DC in the space after the next single crochet of the previous row. Chain 1, DC in the space before the same single crochet of the previous row. Chain 1. Single crochet in the middle DC of next shell stitch. Chain 1 and repeat the steps to the last shell stitch. Single crochet in the top of the last shell stitch. After that, repeat the main pattern from the third row. I made 3 decreasings. The 32nd row, the 46th row and the 52nd row. If you want to make the sleeve longer, add more gray rows in the end of the sleeve. The neckline. Connect the yarn to any place. Crochet a row of HDC around the neckline, but in the corners work 3DC crochet together to make them more rounded. And again 3DC crochet together in the corner. 1 unfinished DC, the second and the third, and crochet them together. After that, make one more single crochet round. Elastic band. Make a foundation single crochet row. I crochet 13 single crochet stitches. chain 2, don't count as a stitch, turn HDC into the back loop only of each HDC to the end of the row. The third row, chain 2, don't count as a stitch, turn your work HDC into the front facing loop of each HDC from the previous row. Work HDC in this place to the end of the row. Repeat rows 2 and 3 until you reach the desired length. You'll need 2 wrist elastic band around 12 centimeters, 2 bottom elastic bands around 45 centimeters for each, and 1 neckline band 60 centimeters, and sew them to the sweater. I sew all these parts with a needle and thread.